Anna Seawald, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about growing ourselves while raising our children. I'm a psychologist, educator, and parent coach. And on this podcast, I explore how you can connect to your authentic self, practice radical self-care, and raise emotionally healthy children. Let's break the cycle of generational trauma for a more peaceful, kind, and compassionate world. Today, 7 ways to improve your well-being, reduce stress, and stay grounded in difficult times. We live in an increasingly stressful world, filled with many demands and uncertainties. Are you feeling overwhelmed or distracted, unable to be fully present? Maybe you're caught in worry, struggling to rest, or feeling anxious about the state of the world. Do you crave more ease, peace, control, and balance in your day-to-day life? My dear friend and colleague, Dr. Laura Froyen, host of the Balanced Parent podcast and regular co-host here with me, and I share practical advice on how to preserve your sanity, restore your sense of control, and increase your overall well-being. Because when parents are well, kids thrive. When parents are not well, kids feel the impact. We hope this episode brings you comfort, a sense of calm, and connection. Please enjoy, and thank you for listening. It's been a while. I think the reason I wanted you to come to the podcast is, we live in this ever stressful, overwhelming, crazy world where things are happening, globally, locally, unrest in many parts of the world, wars, and just a lot is going on. And I feel like people could use a little more support and reminders about self-care, stress management, how to stay calm and grounded and present, some concrete tips, because it's just too much. I was talking to, and the impetus for this episode is I was talking to a friend. We went on a walk. It's winter. It's cold. I usually walk a lot, but this winter I have not because it's so brutal. So I was walking. It was a better day one day. And all I can hear is my friend is talking about problems. She's venting, she's talking. But you know what? After the walk, I realized everything she shared, none of it was her actual life. None of it was happening in her life. She's like, my friend is being fired, blah, 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 lots of things. But when I reflected, I'm like, why is she down? Why is she upset? She met her goals. She told me the positives of what she has done in that week, but she seemed like she discounted the good things that were happening in her life. And she was preoccupied with the larger global things that were happening in other people's lives. And of course, we do want to care about our friends and community and nation and other people. But that experience with this friend brought to me these 2 concepts, local and global. And I want to talk to you about this and, hear your thoughts before we jump into our conversation. It appears that there is the internet, there is social media, and we have access to the news 24/7. We have access to everything globally, right? When our parents were parents, they only knew what was happening in their immediate world with their neighbors, with their just little world. Now we know everything. And what I think is happening, why many people are so stressed and on edge, is because people think the world problems are happening here and now to them. It's their problems. There's no boundary between local and global.
And our nervous systems definitely don't know the difference.
Right. Definitely your nervous system doesn't know the difference. So it is up to you, the listener. And I want to bring this home today to create a strong boundary and worry about only your local worries, right? Yes, you do want to care about what's happening, in one part of the world, but that's a different thing than if those worries are going to take you outside of your life and you are incapacitated to be present and
Yeah.
participate and function, and the local and global is all like blurred, then you need to set a boundary. That is not healthy. And we'll talk more about this, but I just want to hear your thoughts about this local and
Yeah.
global.
I was actually just having a really similar conversation with my daughter. So Ellie is 12 now, a pretty fierce animal rights activist. And sometimes she just gets so overwhelmed with the state of the world for animals. She gets so global in thinking about the laws that allow, animal testing and research to happen. She gets, just gets very big, is very anxiety provoking. It gets her spinning. It makes her feel powerless and lost and like she's never going to be able to help in the way that she wants to be able to. So we were talking about this exact issue around, okay, so we can care about all of these things. We can be passionate about all of these things. And then we need to narrow down and find the place where we can direct that energy to do the most good at the stage that we're in now, right? And so we were talking about how she has a few TV shows that she watches where they're, veterinarians or different people involved in kind of animal rights. And we talked about how those folks have narrowed down the ways in which they're serving their bigger mission, right? They can't save, there's this one veterinarian who works with, I promise I have a point, but there's this one veterinarian who works with exotic animals, and the veterinarian herself feels really strongly that most of these exotic pets should not be in private homes. And she talks about on her show how even though I feel that way, these pets are in private homes. And these animals are pets and they deserve care. And so I'm not going to take a stance that doesn't let me care for those animals, and so she cares for them often free of charge, if as an act of service, even though she would prefer these animals to be in the wild. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so we I've spent a lot of time talking with my daughter about that, about figuring out, okay, what is our capacity in the here and now? As a 12-year-old child in a privileged community, what is our capacity? Where can we direct your passion, your impulse, right? And so she does a number of things that make her feel really good. She has a friend who has some pets, but isn't able to provide veterinary care. So she often has lemonade stands in the summers or hot cocoa stands in the winters to raise money for her friends' pets' veterinary care. She volunteers with me every week, for 3 or 4 hours at our local humane society. So, she reads and researches and helps her friends care for their pets in the best way possible, like researches ways to provide enrichment for the variety of pets her friends have. So there's these ways that she's interacting that are doable for where she is in her stage of development. And I think the message is there for all of us to really think about what are my capacities and what are my impact potentials, right? So where can I have the most impact? And the impact that matters most to me too, right? So there's a lot going on. We're both in the US. I'm raising a gorgeous neurodivergent kiddo, probably 2. The other one's not diagnosed, but probably ADHD is in there. If they were in a mainstream school, they would definitely be, at least one of them would need an IEP or a 504 plan. These are really real concerns that are impacting, potentially would be impacting my family and the families around us and so many others too. I think that we have to be thinking about like those big problems are really overwhelming. And so we take the energy, and the fear, the words, the emotions that are being stirred up and direct them into a place where we can actually have power and potential and impact and a little bit of control, because that control feels really good, really safe, Yeah, I think that figuring that out and your capacity too. And sometimes that means I'm going to focus on my kid. Right now, I don't have capacities to worry about the other kids in my school district. I'm going to focus on my kid right now and make sure their needs are met. And it's okay to be in a season in your life where you recognize that's my capacity level right now.
Agree, agree. The
Ooh,
capacity.
okay, sorry.
That's
I was like on
yeah.
the soapbox there. Sorry.
No, no, of course it's important. The capacity is super important because then it's limited. You don't have endless amount
We
of
don't.
capacity, resources, as I call like your time, your attention, your energy. They're limited. And if it just gets used up while you worry about other people's problems and worries and the global issues, then you don't have it for yourself or your kids. So you have to make a choice. And first you need to become aware of this. Then you need to evaluate, how do you spend your capacity? Where do you want to have an impact? Do you even want to have an impact right now? Can you have
Right.
an impact? Or maybe you need to get into preservation mode and, expand your capacity. And I loved what you said, the words that you used, because we don't want people spinning, losing themselves, feeling disempowered, right?
Yeah.
Because then that's a downward spiral,
Hmm.
and the worrying mind, I feel like has a tendency to worry more and stick and latch on to
Yeah.
more worries and create this
Hmm.
snowball effect. So I think the moment you recognize that you're spinning out of control, that you're worrying about other worries that are not in your domain of control, that they're not yours, they're the global things, refocus and come back to your own little life. It's okay to worry about
Yeah.
your needs, your children's needs, your family's needs, your little neighborhood or your extended family's needs. And I think that's enough. And
It's not
once
right. It's not just okay.
it's
It's good.
it's good and enough. And if everybody did their part, we'll live in a better society. But now
Mhm.
everybody's frenzy and worrying and, in this activation, in rageful hatred, state. And like, this is not helpful. This is not helpful. That's what I would say. So this local and global and creating that boundary, you know, doing things that are in your immediate control, in your local domain, right? Instead of the global.
Mhm.
And when you feel empowered in your local domain, then you can extend to the global. Let's just be honest. What can we do about the wars in different parts of the world as an individual? Very little,
Mm.
right? And so you have to be realistic. Anyways,
I mean, and there probably are people listening who do have more potential for reach and impact on global issues, right? So that we don't always know who our listeners are. If you are in rooms, if you do have a seat at tables where you can have that impact, of course, go for that. I don't have access to those rooms, necessarily, and that I didn't want access to to many
yes,
of those
yes.
rooms. But there's also, so it's something like on like a school board or something has always been of interest to me, especially like when my kids were in public school and they'll be heading back into public school. I think about that a lot. It's not something that I've had capacity for. My neighbor just happens to be running for school board in our area. I'm very excited for him to get onto the school board because then I'm going to have access in ways that I didn't have before. Because I can bring him over a coffee in the middle of the day. He works from home and put ideas on his plate, that are different than maybe what he's hearing in other places. So I think that there's, understanding that we do have the potential to create ripple effects and being strategic about how we're using our energies. And that doesn't mean that we just give up, say like, oh, I can't do anything about that war that's happening over there. But thinking about like, what are the things that are getting me lit up and what can I do in this moment that does fit in with my worldview, with my hopes and dreams for this world, and the smaller community within us, I mean, I don't think that this is what you're saying at all, Anna, that we just shouldn't care or shouldn't worry about it, but just being really careful with ourselves, really compassionate and graceful with ourselves for what we can do and that permission giving of narrowing in on our sphere of impact.
A friend of mine had criticized me that I'm never posting about X, Y, and Z on Facebook. and she's
Mm.
vehemently posting about things on Facebook. I'm like, what have you done with posting like on social media? Nothing. Like, it's just like, I don't see that as a worthwhile effort, for solving X problem, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want to name problems or things like that, but that's one thing. Yeah, and I was on a
I do think it feels like
school
you're doing
board.
something, right?
It,
Like, so I feel like when you're posting, it feels like you're doing something. And I think that that can
yes.
also, maybe on one hand, that's good because it is a little bit relieving to the internal pressure. And at the other end of things, most of the time those posts are seen by people who agree with us, right? Because of the algorithm,
And
right?
then it brings you
And
more
so,
aggravation and you're stuck in a loop.
yeah.
You
And
feel
so
like you're
there's
doing,
this, don't let that be the only thing you're doing, right?
no, but then
Yeah.
like you feel like you're doing something. I feel like you're posting, but it doesn't lead anywhere, but you felt like effortful and you did something, but then you feel disappointed, right? Like like a vicious loop. Anyways,
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
I
want to,
agree. It's like kind of like this false sense of having, I don't know. Yeah, I agree. It's
yes.
empty.
Yeah. So FYI, I served on a school board 2 terms. And you can go as a public and participate and see how things are done. Like if you are not a board member, it's open. So I want to know personally, let's talk about a little personally. How do we stay calm and manage our capacity and resources and things like that? I'm curious if we have similar practices, and then we can help listeners with some tips as well. But what do you
Yeah,
do? What are
yeah.
some of your practices?
I give myself pretty firm boundaries around information that comes in. So I don't spend a lot of time on social media taking in information that is stressful to me. I keep myself apprised of what is happening in the world in small snippets, kind of headlines, unless it's an issue that is of particular interest and value to me. I give myself permission and grace to not not read more than what is good for me. Prioritizing my peace, understanding that, reading about these things is not necessarily going to, if it's not going to serve me in this moment, wherever I am with my own family and my own stuff, then it's okay for me. I can read about it at a different time or learn about it in a different way. I know not everybody probably agrees with that, but so I give myself permission to be a little bit uninformed right now.
Same, I'm in the same
Yeah.
boat. Yes. Yeah.
I think it's
I
okay. I mean, I think that there's such a thing as compassion fatigue, right? There's such a thing as, I think that I know I have a lot of friends who've told me that they've spent just days in bed right now because the world seems too heavy and too bleak to get out of bed. And for me, I think that that would be really easy to settle into. And so I have to have really firm boundaries with myself to protect my mental health and my peace, so that it doesn't get to that place for me. Maybe that's selfish.
No,
I think
no,
that that's
no. Why
okay.
why do
I
you
think it's okay
why are you
to be a little
criticizing
bit of,
yourself?
I'm open to the idea that it is and to the idea that maybe that's okay. I think that there are times in our lives where we do have to be a little self-interested in order to meet our bigger goals, right? And so like
That's where you have locus of control. That's
exactly,
where you have
yeah.
control. Do you want to feel in charge, in control, which is also an illusion, or disempowered and not in control? Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
absolutely. I know. And so yeah, so I mean that the boundaries about around information coming in is a big aspect of my self-care right now. And so like we talk about self-care, I know you and I see eye to eye on this, but like self-care has this, I don't know, this thing about it that is hard to talk about in a way that's real, but I think boundaries are one of the best forms of self-care we can figure out how to do for ourselves. So that's definitely something that is important to me. I've recently been finding exercise really, really helpful. I've been going through a hormonal thing for the past few years where my doctor did not want me exercising vigorously, which has been very hard for me because I've always been like I like to lift heavy weights, you know, like I like doing intense exercise. And I'm finally in a place where I can be back into that. And so, gosh, that's been really good for me. I sleep better. My husband was like, gosh, on the nights that the nights after your morning workout, like you just like conk out so fast. And I don't wake up in the middle of the night. It's so my exercising has been really, really good for me. What do you do? What are some of the things? I'm sure there's more, but
Yeah,
I'd
no,
love to know what you're doing.
yeah, don't worry. I have ideas. I'll throw some ideas out there. I do the same. Yeah, I can without repeating the same thing. I do lift, I do exercise, I do yoga as well, weekly yoga with my daughter. Like I do the walking. I'm a big walker
Hmm.
as well. So I strongly believe like especially for perimenopausal women, there's so much research. We keep hearing about this, right? Lifting
Hmm.
heavy is important, and it is important. I do that. And of course, it helps with sleeping and stress management and just feeling great, right? With
Yeah.
balances your mood and hormones and things like that. And the news, I'm in alignment with that. What I wanted to say is, this compassion fatigue you said, I want to make a correction.
Okay.
So when I talked to Kristen Neff, I believe I asked her about that. I said, is compassion fatigue a thing? She said, no, because if you're not extended self compassion to yourself, then yes, you can fatigue. But the
Yeah.
key for not feeling fatigued when you do care for others and you extend compassion towards others is self compassion. So,
Yeah,
number one has to be
absolutely.
self compassion, and you are the main promoter of this idea, self-compassion. So I was going to say, hey, Laura, compassion fatigue, don't worry, like give yourself compassion in order not to feel fatigued.
I agree. Yeah, and I think that for listeners that might sound kind of counterintuitive, right? But it's like filling, the metaphor of filling your own cup first. So if we have a cup of compassion and we're constantly pouring it into other people, of course it's going to run out. We need to think about it as like we have this cup of compassion, we're filling it from the bottom. We're always filling it, pouring into our own cup of compassion, self-compassion, and then it's overflowing into everyone else around us. And that's how you never get into that place of compassion fatigue for sure.
Yeah, because if
Yeah.
you give,
And
give, give and worry, 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 you're not going to have anything.
right. And
So,
that's, I mean, and
yeah,
so like the things that I was talking about, like, giving myself permission
that is
to not read,
self-compassion.
that's self-compassion. That's an act of self-compassion.
Hmm.
Yeah, and learning to see those things as compassionate, so even like thinking about like, okay, so boundaries and self-compassion, I think are if you have those two things and some joyful movement, like nourishing food, like nourishing your mind and body and heart, like those are like that self-care right there.
Yes, this brings me to my point, which I have in my notes. My second point was besides the local global is be with people.
Yeah.
Speaking of nourishing your heart, I think one of the best ways, to feel great and combat stress in today's world, instead of behind your screen and fighting with people on social media and getting bombarded with misinformation, disinformation, and nonsense nonstop, is go and spend time with real people and do ordinary things like share a cup of coffee, share a meal, cook together, right?
Hmm.
Laugh together, go for a walk together. Simple things that I feel like this social media makes you believe that you are with people, but obviously you aren't. So
Yeah.
being in a physical presence of someone, seeing their movements, expressions, feeling their energy, sharing that energy is revitalizing, is a stress reliever.
Hmm.
So I can't emphasize enough how spending time with people in whatever capacity, and it doesn't have to be much, right? Some people say, oh, I don't have time for that. Well, you need to prioritize that, right? Then where does your
Hmm.
time go? If you don't have time for spending time with friends or a friend,
Hmm.
then that's not a good life. Then
Yeah.
that's a busy, overwhelmed. I feel like, yes, even if you are a hardworking parent of multiple kids and a single parent, you can still find that. You can be creative. I don't want to even say creative, but that's possible to find
Mhm.
another mom, another family. Like you interact with people. There are people everywhere. You can create little interaction times in your day or in your week. If it's not daily, then it's weekly, then maybe multiple times a week, but it has to be with real people. We know that from the happiness research, right? From the Harvard, like 80-year-old research, we know how it's the relationships that make people happy and it contributes to longevity and all of that. But that's cliche, but true.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I want to
absolutely.
ask you, like, I am big on social interaction. Like
Hmm.
I do have that in my life. I have coffee with friends, I exercise with friends, I walk with friends. Even if it's a brief moment, every day I prioritize social interaction, in-person social interaction. I have a book club, I take a class, different things, right? What do
Hmm.
you do personally? Because you have two children and your children are younger. Give us realistic advice. My kid is
Yeah.
older, so it's a lot easier for me to be more social, right? As opposed to when she was a toddler. But I was socializing with other moms when she was a toddler as well. So what do you do personally?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Anna, this is something that I'm not super great at. So I'm introverted, I tend to feel drained by big outings and need a lot of recovery time after, intense social interactions. I
Well, but
happen to
why do you go into intense big social outings? Why can
No,
it
no,
be a friend
yeah.
for 15 minutes? One
Yeah, no,
person,
I
right?
100% agree. So I don't often do the big stuff. The little stuff I love. I mean, I happen to be married to one of my best friends in the world. So my husband and I actually get a lot of fulfillment from each other, which is really lovely. And I have a couple friends who are really they're community-minded people. So they're really good at creating community and creating space and time. So I let myself be pulled in by those folks. Gosh, though I'm not super great at it. It's something that I'm actively working on. One of the ways that I work on that is to try every day to make a human connection with one person that I don't know. So whether that is, at the checkout at a grocery store, that interaction like, hi, how's your day today? Blah, blah, like have that be a real conversation, a real like dropping in the moment. That's something that's attainable for me. Again, like I try to be as compassionate with myself as possible, like recognizing my own limitations and giving myself a goal that is attainable for me. So I usually pick one person a day to have that like drop in the present moment human interaction with a person that I don't know. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I mean, my kids are really helpful in making me have some interaction. So they really want to be with their friends right now. They're both in that tween era where everyone still needs parents to drive them, right? And so I do get, just yesterday I ended up taking four additional kids home with me. And then all of their parents came to pick up around the same time. And so we sat and had a glass of wine while the kids were finishing up playing. And that was really lovely. So I really appreciate when my kids kind of make me do things like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
But
Um,
it's again, it's something that I actively know that I need more of and I'm working on.
so how about your watercolor? Is it a class or you do it on your own or is it remote?
Yeah, so oh gosh, so a lot of my watercoloring happens by myself.
You are
Most of the
truly an introvert.
I really, and it's
Yeah,
okay. Like it's
yeah,
okay that
yeah.
I like myself.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like time with myself. Just before we were meeting today, I was kind of cleaning the house and then I spent a little bit of time having lunch and journaling. I like being in my head a little bit, and so that's okay too.
It is. Yeah. Listen,
Yeah.
I like my own company the best in the whole world. I mean,
Yeah.
you're
It's
preaching
good
to
to
the
like your
choir.
it's good
Yeah.
to like your own company. It's good to be comfortable and with the parts of yourself that make you uncomfortable and get to know them and all of those things. I do have
And
a
sorry
watercolor.
for
Oh, go
that.
ahead.
Sorry, so for that you need solitude. So maybe we can talk about solitude and how to embrace it more.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, solitude is a huge thing that I need in my life. And I don't know that everyone needs solitude to the same degree. I do think everybody needs it a little bit, you know? And I think for people who avoid it, there's probably something to look at there,
for sure. So
right?
back to your watercolor.
Yeah. Oh, so I do, there is, I go to or I used to go to an in-person weekly kind of studio session where people were
Mhm.
just like working on their own. I took a break from that over the fall and I'm trying to find my way back into it. It just happens to be at a time that is challenging to get to, and I need to figure out why I'm avoiding it too. There's probably something there that I'm avoiding, you know? Um, Creativity though is a piece that's really important for my own stress relief. Being able to engage with beauty and like creating something beautiful, really is good for me. So no, it's good to know about yourself, those things that you need. And I think that most of us benefit from having a moment of creativity in our lives in and at a regular time, whatever that creativity looks like for you, right? So for me, maybe it's even just sitting down and doodling is good for me versus, other people might put on music and groove to it. I just think that there's benefit in being creative for most people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So I have, well, I don't want to repeat what you're saying because they're on my list as well. Another one on my list is have a worry window, continuing the worry topic as we started this conversation with. I think give yourself time and say, I'm going to worry about this, you know, for 10 minutes
Yeah, a
and,
container.
like
Yeah.
create a little container and do worry about
Hmm.
it, because if you don't worry about it, it's going to just stick out, right? That white elephant effect or whatever. But you do want to worry about something, but there is an expiration date. You don't want to worry about something like the entire day and the week that it takes over your life. Give yourself a little time and container, worry about the thing that you're worrying about, and then say to yourself, that's it. Like, I'm going to go and engage in a different activity. And the different activity, I think, to engage in would be a present moment activity, such that you need to follow like a step by step, like cooking from a recipe, baking from a recipe, because a
Mm-hmm.
different part of the brain is engaged when you try
Mm-hmm.
to follow a recipe. You're not going to worry actively while you are trying to follow this recipe not to mess up, right? So when you feel a lot of worry and anxiety, not anxiety necessarily, I mean cognitive worry, because
Mm-hmm.
anxiety is its own beast. It can be more physical and cognitive,
For
right?
sure, yeah.
We have lots of episodes about anxiety, but I think I'm talking about the worry, that mental cognitive, constantly chewing on,
Like the perseverating kind of, it's just
yeah, obsessive compulsive
churning.
thoughts, the
Yeah.
churning, the ruminations, the
Hmm.
preoccupations with ideas. When you feel in that place, knitting, crocheting, like engaging in present moment activity, like cooking and baking is super easy for people. So that's why I'm using that as an example.
Hmm.
So try to do that. That snaps you out of that worry cycle. That's a quick tip right there. Another thing is, I love this for myself too. Go and organize a small portion of your home. It could be a drawer, a part of the closet, even a small task that you start and finish and you see a result. It gives you a good
Mm-hmm.
sense and you feel productive. You feel excited. Like it gives you a boost of good hormones and neurotransmitters and whatever. But
Yes.
it's good to do that. Like instead of saying, I'm going to spring clean the house and it's like, boom, like an overwhelming project, start small, super tiny.
Hmm.
This drawer, this particular drawer, or this
Right.
particular, closet portion or whatever, or the bathroom under the sink, and see how that makes you feel. I also love engaging with beauty. Like I love cleaning and organizing my home and creating a nice environment. I don't
Hmm.
feel like that's a wasted effort. It gives me a lot of energy. It reorients me. It helps me with like
Hmm.
mental worries and things like that. It just immediately changed the energy, my mood, and it affects other people. So another tip I have is don't feel like cleaning and organizing is a bad thing. Maybe you grew up like people have a lot of hang-ups around cleaning and organizing, but like, can you reframe that? Can you change that narrative? Um,
Hmm.
because the environment that you create is going to have such an direct impact on how you feel and how others feel. Can you create an oasis, a container for your family to
Hmm.
feel energized and loved and happy? That's so doable. There's no recipe in this, but everybody can follow their intuition and just do that. And I just love doing that. It gives me so much, I dare to say, joy,
Yeah.
cleaning and organizing and making a home to feel like my own space, and it impacts others as well.
Hmm.
How about you?
well, Anna, I just like seeing and hearing how lit up you are by that.
When I'm cleaning and
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's this piece of it too, though, is that like what a few of the things that we're talking about here really are getting to know ourselves and accept ourselves, right? Getting to know what it is that makes us have that lighter feeling, that more joyful feeling. And it's different for all of us. Just because Anna is saying that that works for her doesn't mean it has to work for you. I do think organizing can feel really good, especially if you are doing it in chunks where you are giving yourself a container so that you can be successful, right? Yeah, but gosh, that light feeling, figuring out what that is for you, that in and of itself is a job for some of us because, many of us grew up in circumstances where we weren't even asked to think about what was
Mhm.
good for us, what gave us that feeling, right? So many of us don't even know what those unmet needs are that are lingering under the surface, yeah, I think figuring that out for yourself, asking yourself, when was the last time I felt that without trying? When was the last time, like, yeah, that makes, or what is the opposite of that feeling? And when do I feel that? And what's the opposite of doing those things, so I definitely feel in the moment and lighter when I'm baking. I feel that way when I'm painting, usually. I like to be around old things. I don't know, that's weird, but I like to think about people's stories and lives. That really lights me up. I have this kind of curiosity. My mom and I call it Goldilocks syndrome, where we just like kind of want to peek into everybody's lives. So like being in a place like an antique store really like makes me think about the world and the people that touched and used these items and the lives that they lived. And I really like being curious and filled with wonder. Those are feelings that when I'm having them, I know that I'm happier. And so often I try to bring them out in myself, because that leads to happiness for me. Do you know what I mean?
Of course,
So like
yes.
I chase wonder and awe and curiosity, and in a variety of ways.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Because those are
Yeah.
they're such light feelings. They're just
Uh,
so, yeah.
I know, I know. Another thing I have on my list here is engage in prayer or meditation or something of that nature, right? Like reflection,
Mm,
introspection. It could be like that you need some kind of solitude for. It could be poetry even, right? Or a piece of writing or scripture. I feel like that's also so key, but people are so removed from that, right?
yeah.
A lot of people are like, I'm not religious, I'm not this and that, but you can still engage in your version of a prayer, right? Or
Mm.
meditation or introspection and journaling. These are key.
Anna, can I
It's
ask you a question about
yeah.
that? So,
Mhm.
what do you think that meditation and prayer, like what do those things have in common? Like what, so for the folks who maybe spend a lot of time praying, or for the folks who spend a lot of time meditating, what is similar between those
Mm.
practices that we can pull out as like these are the what you can give yourself an opportunity to experience, you know?
Yeah, I think the solitude part, taking time to connect to something larger or seek answers
Mm,
outside of yourself, not to be wrapped up in your own worry bubble, but just pause, right?
pausing.
Pause and
Yeah.
embrace stillness and, and feel like this tool is a vehicle towards something or getting you somewhere. I feel like it's an empowering feeling. I mean,
Mm,
I don't believe like there is God above and sitting there and granting your wishes or your prayers. Not in that sense, but in a more spiritual way. I think for me, those are the things, that introspection, that pause, the stillness, you know,
stillness, quiet,
quiet,
solitude.
connecting to something larger than yourself, like stepping outside of yourself. Because when you are worrying, you're like so maniacally focused in your own little bubble. Again, that in this case, you want to expand and go global instead of
Mm,
becoming local. Because then it's too much, right? You don't want to be self-centered, self-focused, but
mm,
that's like reinforces this pitiful, worrisome feelings that you have about yourself. And it sort of victimizes, you feel like that.
mm.
That's how I see it. How about
Yeah.
yourself? Do you see it differently?
No, I think that there's an aspect of it that involves surrender, like
Yeah.
kind of
Hmm.
get like the like placing the control or the
Hmm.
outcome out
Letting
like outside of
go. Yeah.
yourself. Yeah, like that
Yeah.
letting go piece of it that I think it like many people seek and can benefit from. I really connect with what you said about finding something larger than yourself. I think, for me, one of the reasons why I feel so drawn to self-compassion based mindfulness practices is that aspect of common humanity. I find that honestly to be one of the most relieving parts of the theory, just like, gosh, we are just humans having a human experience. You know, I'm having this experience just like thousands of people before me and thousands of people after me. Like, there's nothing terribly unique about these thoughts and feelings I have, and therefore I am never alone. So for me, that feeling of loneliness that can be so hard when you're grappling with it can be relieved in those moments of mindful meditation, I guess. Do you know what I mean? And
Yes, of course.
it's not even necessarily like the meditation. It's for me, it's when I'm out on a walk and the light hits the water of the pond in my neighborhood in just a certain way, and
Mindfulness. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I mean, and that like
mindfulness.
that's
Yeah.
mindfulness, right? But like
Mhm.
it doesn't I think we people think that it means I'm gonna say a meditation in my head, or I'm going to have no thoughts in my head. I don't mean it in that way. I mean
Yeah.
dropping into that present moment and allowing myself to be part of something bigger.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, another thing I have on my list, I feel like I have too many things on my list, is
you don't. It's
I know,
great.
feel your feelings and nervous system regulation.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we talk about on the podcast, we've talked about so many episodes, and I'll link in the show notes about self-regulation and feeling your feelings. But this is also part of it, to when you feel a certain emotion, allow yourself, embrace it, to feel it fully, and it will dissipate, it will go away, it will
they
loosen
don't last
the
very long.
they don't
Yeah.
last very long. I feel like we do so much to avoid it, to push it down, or sometimes there are like processes, go talk about it or name it to tame it. This is all, I think, wrong. Like, I see the feelings, the emotions as physical sensations that arise. Don't give too much meaning, don't give too much attached story or narrative. Why am I feeling? How am I feeling? What am I feeling? Nothing like that. Just drop in the present moment. Try to feel and note the sensation, how it flows, how it changes in your body. It could be hard for a lot of people, obviously, who are not into, who haven't done, who have like sexual trauma, they have body based, they're not feeling safe in their
Mhm.
body. Like there's a caveat to all of the things that we're saying, but this is a
Of
very
course,
general
yes.
statement that, it's nothing scary. I think many people are wanting to do this feeling your feelings correctly, and they're trying to, like, what am I feeling? What's the emotion in my feeling? I would say don't even worry about it. In the present moment, when you feel something, it doesn't
Mm,
matter what you feel, right? Your palms are sweaty, note what you're feeling, your breath, it could be a hormonal thing, it could be what you ate, a reaction to that. Like those feelings arise and they're just not that important in the moment. Maybe
mm,
later you can, through art, through movement, through introspection, through journaling, write about them and process if there was something to be processed. But in the moment, in the present moment, I feel like there's not much processing needs to be done or thought engagement. You need to sort of ride the wave in your body and
mm.
just observe and be present and breathe through it, through your diaphragm, and just, self-compassionate touch, whatever you can. And that's it. There is not
Yeah.
much to it for the emotions. I'm curious where you stand. How does this resonate? And I welcome a critical comment as well.
I think for me that it depends on the emotion and my relationship to it too. So
Mm.
there are emotions and feelings that, while uncomfortable, like I don't necessarily mean uncomfortable, like while un not necessarily pleasurable, I feel comfortable with. The softer, painful emotions, sorrow, despair, sadness, those ones I feel like super comfortable with. Um,
It's the
like
anger that most people have
the,
a hard time.
yeah,
Like,
so
yes.
like the anger and for me the anger often is secondary to some of those softer emotions. And for me, I often have to write through the anger in order to get to the softer emotions, to the deeper fears. So when I'm overcome with anger or frustration, I do something that I call rage journaling. And it's completely cathartic. I let myself say all the things that I would be way too ashamed to say out loud. The things that could hurt the people I love, the things that are untrue about the people I love or about myself, just kind of saying all the deepest, hardest things that are raging through my mind and that are preventing me from getting to that softer, more compassionate place. I write them out and then periodically go through and rip those pages out of my journal and burn them. Sometimes when I'm
Oh, I
grappling
want
with
to
something,
read those thoughts. No, I'm
oh
kidding.
no, I mean, they're superhuman. Man, they're superhuman. Like, you know, is it worth it? Why am I like this? Why are they like this? Why can't I get it right? Just super, just human, just the deepest fears, that we have about ourselves, that we're unlovable at our very core, like, I mean, that's the deepest human fear, right?
Right.
And of course, like I would never want my kids to read them because they're not true. They're just the thoughts that just swirl around. And for me, they get in the way of me being able to be with myself. And so for me, writing them out, getting them out, often sobbing works really, really well. I have, some clients and friends who use tapping during that phase. So they will use the EFT tapping on spots while they're kind of just saying to themselves all the like those hard things that are just rolling through so that they can get to the truth of the matter, the root of the matter. I like having it written down because I like to go back over it and notice the common lies that my brain will tell myself, and find patterns. So like I would just was doing this, I had a moment with my kiddo over the weekend, where I was just so confused and so lost about what to do. And then I also had a very similar feeling moment with my husband. And through these journaling, I was able to look at like what came out of it, like what came out of my mind as I was writing down, and realized like the way that I was feeling with my husband was probably how my daughter was feeling with me. And
Mm.
isn't it interesting that those same worries and insecurities that I might have with my partner, that my kid might have some of those same worries and insecurities with me? And just like noticing that pattern and like what do we do with that and how do we communicate more clearly with each other in the moment, how we really and truly feel about each other, you know? So like sometimes I don't feel like I know exactly how to make my daughter feel loved and accepted because she's different than me, and things that I do naturally land on her wrong, with no ill intention on my part, but they do. And so there's that fear. And then at the same time, my husband's different than me. The way he expresses his love, always land on me in the way that I want. And I'm hungry for a different type of expression of love sometimes from him. And so then does he, if he's not expressing it in the way that I want it, does he actually love me? Of course, I know he loves me. And he maybe just, it just is, it's interesting how these things mirror each other. And so for me, I like writing it down so I can look at it and think about it. That helps me.
Wow. No, that's
So
no, that's great. I didn't know that about you. I think I would love to do an episode about anger, rage specifically one day. Like there's a lot to say about that. But this reminds me of a comment I received from a friend recently. And I was thinking about it like for a while. She said to me, I am so mad. She received some bad news with this Trump administration about her workplace and things like that. She said,
Mm.
I am so mad, but I'm trying to exude calm. And I'm like, man, that's not right. Like if you're
Mm.
mad, you gotta go and feel the madness, the
I think it
full.
has a lot of messaging for us, like a lot of information, valuable information.
Right. Well, like it's not gonna work if you're trying to exude calm. Like you're pushing this energy of the anger so hard, right? Down or away. And it's just like, I was thinking about that a lot. I didn't say, hey, that's wrong, but I said, note to self, discuss this on the podcast someday.
Yes, yeah.
And
The research tells us too, holding in anger, like swallowing it, keeping it down is bad for the body. Like shortens your lifespan, hard on the heart, hard on the nervous system, hard on the memory, like it's not good for us.
no. Okay, so let's wrap this up.
Okay.
Like where we started and what are the some things that we shared. I hope it's useful for the listener and they stayed with us until the very last moment. So let's bring it home. Oh, we didn't talk about social media and how both of us don't use Instagram anymore. Maybe a few words about that. Are you on Instagram?
I'm not. No, I mean, periodically I'll hop onto Instagram just on my browser, but it's only to watch these videos of a couple creators who make like little miniature worlds. And it's only for pleasure and beauty. So like there's this one creator, I can't remember her name, but she has knitted Toad and Frog. Like Toad and Frog are friends, like the cute little story about the two little Toad and Frogs. And she just created this like little world where they have like tea together, and you can
Oh,
watch on video, like a video of a stop motion film of them having tea or painting. And so like I'm all for that. So I will
uh,
watch, like I will get on Instagram to watch like one of those videos. But no, I don't have it on my phone.
yeah, no, I don't have
Yeah.
any social media on my phone. And I deactivated my Instagram account. Like I took another step. Like
Wow,
I was
that's
off of it for
big.
over a year, and I'm just like, shall I delete this? The reason I haven't deleted this because I have two accounts. Like one is personal, and I have lots of pictures from 2012, and basically like a journal of my daughter's
Hmm.
childhood. Like I want to save and download, and then just delete the whole thing. But that's me. I take critical measures. I'm not judging anyone for using it, but that again, like it's a time sack, right? We have talked about social media and Instagram many
Yeah.
times. So I was curious whether you were back or not, but that's also protecting your capacity and
Yeah,
or
yeah.
getting what you want to get out of those social media platforms, right? Using it more intentionally, and not being ashamed if you're using for entertainment or for
Yeah.
pleasure for a little bit or just disconnecting from the world for a little bit. That's okay too, you know.
It's the intention and the consciousness behind
Yeah.
it, right? That is
Right,
so
right.
important. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I periodically get Facebook back onto my phone when I'm like decluttering because then I want to give things away on my buy nothing group that's on Facebook, or if I'm going to sell something on Marketplace. And that's how it usually ends up on my phone. But yeah, no, I'm not super invested in a lot that's going on in social media.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know about for you, but I started just noticing myself seeking validation from places that weren't actually in alignment with where I wanted to get my validation, like weren't in alignment, getting it from views and likes and comments. I need to find, my worth elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's like everybody's selling something. Like when I see that, when I activate it to deactivate, right? You have to go
Mm-hmm.
and deactivate. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, this is even worse than I expected or remembered. It was so awful. The feeling immediately shrinks you down, and it's just this disgusting. Everybody's selling, promoting aggressively. And I just don't want to be part of it. Of course, there are a few cute videos of food making and things like that, but like I want to live in my real world,
Mm-hmm.
little as it is, with real people that I have in my life and focus on the things that I can change, have
Mm-hmm.
control, and contribute to those who I love. And I can make a difference, like that impact and capacity in the local and the
Yeah.
global that we started. Like that's how I live my life. And what are the main things that we're wrapping up with? Like you always bring it home so nicely.
Yeah. I mean, so I think it sounds like what we're saying is figure out your capacity. Kind of there's a invitation here to get to know yourself. Really get to know what lights you up, what drains your energy, then use really good boundaries to protect your energy and make steps in the way that like where you can have that positive impact, where you do have control, release those other pieces, have a container for putting those worries in, feel your feelings, and then go and do something positive for yourself, something caring and loving and compassionate for yourself and for your community, even if that community is just your little family.
And remember, that's enough.
It's more than enough.
And you are enough, I think. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Oh,
As
Anna.
always, I love talking with you on the
Me
podcast.
too. I just love getting to come hang out with you. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes today's conversation, my dear listener, and I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Be sure to hit that follow button so you don't miss future episodes, and take a moment to leave a rating and review. It really helps others find the show. I would love to hear your thoughts and takeaways. Join the conversation in the Authentic Parenting Facebook group or visit the contact page at authenticparenting.com/contact to get in touch. Authentic Parenting is an ad-free show, and your donations is what makes this podcast possible. Support the show by visiting authenticparenting.com/support or becoming a patron at patreon.com. Your contributions make it possible for me to continue bringing you weekly episodes. And as always, connect to the present moment, to yourself and your children. Until next week, I am Anna Seewald. Thank you so much for listening.